Hello there and welcome. Tonight, we are staying grounded. We will not be venturing to distant stars or drifting through the cold dust of nebulae. Instead, we will be exploring the quiet wonders of the world we call home. Life on this planet is more mysterious, more resilient, and more profoundly extraordinary than most of us ever imagine. From oceans that glow with living light to creatures that can seemingly live forever. From ancient forests hidden beneath our feet to microscopic beings that can survive the vacuum of space. Earth is alive in ways that may surprise you and soothe you. Some of what you hear may gently change the way you see the world. Other discoveries might simply float by like petals on a soft breeze. Curious and quietly unforgettable. For now, let the world outside soften. Let the edges of the day begin to blur. And let us begin this slow and soothing journey through the quiet miracles of life on Earth, drifting near the warm coastal waters of the Mediterranean, and in the sun-dappled currents of oceans all around the world. There floats a creature that seems to defy one of nature's most fundamental and universal laws. It is called Turritopsis dohrnii, but it is more commonly known by a much more evocative name. The immortal jellyfish. It is a tiny thing, no bigger than a fingernail. A small, transparent bell, fringed with delicate, almost invisible tentacles. It moves with the patient rhythm of the tides, a nearly weightless being, made of little more than water and time. And it is this relationship with time that makes this quiet creature so utterly remarkable. For most living things, time flows in a single direction, a line that stretches from birth to growth to maturity and eventually to an end. But for this tiny jellyfish, the line is not a line at all. It is a circle. When the immortal jellyfish is injured, or when it grows old, or when the conditions of its environment become too stressful to bear, it can do something that feels like a page torn from a book of myths. It can revert its own body to an earlier stage of its life. It is a process of biological alchemy known as transdifferentiation. A mature cell, one that has already become specialized, like a skin cell or a nerve cell, can transform into a completely different kind of cell. The jellyfish does not simply heal, it unravels. The bell and tentacles begin to deteriorate, to dissolve back into a more fundamental form. It is like watching a butterfly, in a moment of impossible grace, folding its wings and turning back into a caterpillar. The adult form, the medusa, sinks to the ocean floor. There it reattaches itself to a rock or a piece of coral, and it becomes a polyp, the jellyfish equivalent of its own childhood. A small, plant-like stalk. And from this polyp, a new colony can bud, and a new generation of jellyfish, genetically identical to the first, is born. The cycle begins again. This is not just a theory, or a rare, once-in-a-lifetime event. It has been observed, repeatedly, in laboratory settings. The jellyfish can cycle through its life stages, over and over and over again. It is not truly immortal, in the way we might imagine. It cannot survive being eaten by a predator. It cannot withstand being destroyed. But it does hold a key to a kind of biological eternity. It doesn't defeat death. It simply sidesteps it. It doesn't hold the key to eternal life for us, of course. But its existence serves as a quiet, humbling reminder. A reminder that nature's imagination, its capacity for invention, far exceeds our own. Here, floating quietly in the silent, blue, green sea, is a creature that rewinds time. Not once, but again and again. A living embodiment of renewal, drifting on the currents of an endless beginning. From the fluid, timeless world of the ocean, we drift now to a different kind of stillness. The deep quiet of an ancient forest. In the stillness of this place, there is a conversation taking place. A slow and silent dialogue happening just beneath your feet. For centuries, trees were thought to be solitary giants, individuals competing for sunlight, for water, for a place in the sky. But now we know that this is only half the story. They are connected, linked by vast, underground networks of gossamer, fine fungal threads. These networks are known as mycorrhiza. Delicate filaments, thinner than a human hair, that weave through the soil and fuse with the roots of trees. Through these living threads, an entire forest can be joined into a single, breathing entity. It is not a metaphor. It is a biological reality, so vast and so complex that some scientists have begun to call it the Wood Wide Web. Through this hidden, subterranean network, trees exchange more than just nutrients. They share resources. A tree that is thriving in the sun can send sugars and carbon down through its roots and into the fungal network. These resources can then travel to a smaller, younger tree struggling in the shade. Older, more established trees, sometimes called mother trees, can support their own offspring, funneling a steady stream of life, giving compounds through this hidden, living web. A birch tree might share its resources with a neighboring fir. A dying tree, in its final moments, may pass its last stores of energy back into the forest community. It is a quiet form of intelligence, not a conscious intelligence like our own, but one that is deeply and profoundly cooperative. The network also carries information, chemical signals, sent like whispers through the soil. If one tree is attacked by a pest, it can release alarm signals that travel through the mycorrhizal threads to other trees. Those neighbors, now warned, can begin to ramp up their own chemical defenses, preparing for an attack before it even arrives. Warnings about drought, about disease, about the changing conditions of the soil. All of it flows in a slow and steady stream through the silent world of roots and fungi. The forest, it turns out, is not merely a collection of individuals. It is a single breathing, sharing community, a vast superorganism connected by a biological nervous system made of earth and fungus. Each tree, a neuron. Each root, a synapse. And in this deep, dark quiet, the forest thinks and feels and lives as one. From the vast, interconnected world of the forest floor, we now shrink our focus. Down and down and down, to a scale that is almost impossible to perceive. Here, in a drop of water on a piece of moss, or clinging to a grain of sand, lives one of Earth's most extraordinary survivors. They are called tardigrades, though many know them by their more affectionate nickname, water bears. They are microscopic creatures, less than a single millimeter long. Under the lens of a microscope, they look like wrinkled, 8-legged gummy bears, chubby, slow-moving, and almost comical in their appearance. But do not let their gentle look or their tiny size fool you. Tardigrades are perhaps the most indestructible animals on the entire planet. They can survive conditions that would destroy almost any other known form of life. They can withstand freezing temperatures close to absolute zero, the point at which all atomic motion ceases. They can endure boiling heat, far above the temperature of scalding water. They can survive crushing pressures many times greater than those found in the deepest ocean trenches. They can be exposed to lethal doses of radiation, hundreds of times more intense than what a human could withstand. And perhaps most astonishingly of all, they can survive in the cold, airless vacuum of outer space. In 2007, a group of scientists launched a cluster of tardigrades into low Earth orbit. They were exposed directly to the harsh environment beyond our atmosphere. The vacuum, the solar radiation, and when they returned to Earth, many of them were still alive. So how do they do it? How does such a small, soft-bodied creature endure such impossible extremes? They do it by entering a state of suspended animation called cryptobiosis. When faced with a life-threatening environment, the tardigrade does not fight it. It surrenders to it. It curls into a tiny, desiccated ball known as a ton. It purges its body of almost all of its water. Its metabolism slows down to less than 1% of its normal rate. It essentially stops. It does not die. It simply waits. In this state, it can endure for years, even decades. A tiny speck of life paused in time. And then, when conditions improve, when water returns, the tardigrade begins to stir. It rehydrates, unfurls its tiny legs, and slowly crawls away, as if waking from a long and dreamless sleep. These creatures are found everywhere on Earth, from the highest mountains to the deepest seas, from volcanic vents to the ice of Antarctica. They are a quiet testament to the sheer tenacity of life. A reminder that life is tougher, stranger, and more adaptable than we could ever have imagined. Even when it is this small, drifting, almost invisibly, through the silent spaces of our world. We drift back now through time, back through the eons to a much younger and very different Earth, a world before our own. Today, we breathe it in with every moment. It is the very air that sustains us, the invisible fuel that powers our cells, oxygen. But long, long ago, in the deep past of our planet, oxygen was not a life giver. It was Earth's most dangerous and deadly poison. Over 2 billion years ago, the world was an alien place. The sky was a hazy orange. The oceans were rich in iron, and the air was almost entirely free of oxygen. Early microbial life. The planet's very first inhabitants thrived in this oxygen-free atmosphere. These ancient organisms, known as anaerobes, were perfectly adapted to a world without oxygen. To them, it was a stable and predictable home. But then, something new emerged. A tiny, revolutionary microbe called cyanobacteria. These microscopic organisms had developed a new trick, a new way of making a living: photosynthesis. They learned to harness the energy of the sun, and in doing so, they began to release a waste product. A gas that to them was simply exhaust. That gas was oxygen. At first, it wasn't very much. The small puffs of oxygen, released by these tiny bacteria, were quickly absorbed by the iron in the oceans, creating vast, banded iron formations that we can still see today in the planet's geology. But the cyanobacteria were successful. They multiplied. They spread across the ancient seas. And over millions upon millions of years, the oxygen they produced began to accumulate. First in the oceans, and then in the atmosphere itself. This triggered what is now known as the Great Oxidation Event. And for the countless anaerobic species that had dominated the planet for 1 billion years, it was a catastrophe, a global pollution event on a scale almost impossible to comprehend. Oxygen was toxic to them. It corroded their cells. It disrupted their ancient metabolisms. For these first inhabitants of Earth, the very air was turning to poison. It caused a mass extinction, wiping out untold numbers of microbial species. The world was changing. But for others, this invisible, corrosive gas became a new source of energy. A powerful and efficient fuel. New forms of life evolved that could not only tolerate oxygen, but could use it to power a more complex and energetic metabolism. Eventually, it was this oxygen, this ancient pollutant, that powered the rise of multicellular life. Plants, animals, and eventually, us so, in a very real way. The breath that keeps you alive is also the legacy of one of the greatest mass extinctions in Earth's history. Oxygen is not just a life-giving gas. It is history, written in every single inhale. A quiet reminder that even destruction can pave the way for a new kind of creation. We often picture plants as passive beings, green and gentle and still, reaching quietly for the sun. But not all plants are content to wait politely for their nutrients. Some go hunting. In the boggy, nutrient-poor soils of swamps and wetlands, a different kind of plant has evolved. Carnivorous plants, like the Venus flytrap, the pitcher plant, and the sundew. They lure insects, not with the promise of pollination, but with the false allure of sweet scents or glistening, sticky nectar. And then they trap them. The Venus flytrap is a marvel of mechanical precision. Its leaves are modified into jaw, like traps lined with tiny trigger hairs. When an unsuspecting insect lands and brushes against one hair, nothing happens. The plant waits. It is counting. If a second hair is touched within about 20 seconds, the trap snaps shut in a fraction of a second. This counting mechanism ensures the plant doesn't waste its energy on a false alarm, like a falling raindrop. Once caught, the plant secretes digestive enzymes and slowly absorbs the nutrients from its prey. Pitcher plants form deep, slippery wells filled with a cocktail of digestive fluids. Insects are drawn to the nectar on the rim, lose their footing on the slick surface, and slide down into the pool below, unable to escape. Others, like the sundews, are covered in tiny, glistening tentacles, each one tipped with a droplet of sticky mucilage. They glisten in the sun like morning dew. But when an insect lands, it becomes hopelessly stuck. And then, in a slow and graceful motion, the tentacles curl inwards, enveloping their prey, like slow-motion, sticky arms. Why do they do this? Why has nature produced these quiet and patient predators? Because they live in places where the soil is poor. Bogs and fens, where essential nutrients like nitrogen are incredibly hard to find, so they have adapted, not with teeth or claws or speed, but with patience and clever, intricate design. These quiet predators remind us that survival takes many, many forms, and that even the gentlest green leaf might be hiding a hidden and patient appetite. From these patient and surprising hunters, we turn our gaze now to something more familiar, something we see every day, yet perhaps rarely truly notice: a single leaf. Hold one up to the light, and you will see a quiet and profound miracle. Each leaf is a finely tuned machine, soft to the touch, yet crafted with a microscopic and breathtaking precision. At its heart lies a delicate network of veins. They branch out from the central stem, spreading across the surface, like rivers and their tributaries. branching across a miniature landscape. These are not mere patterns. They are the leaf's circulatory system, a living pipeline carrying cool water and minerals up from the deep, dark earth, and carrying sweet sugars, the very essence of sunlight turned to food, to every corner of the plant. The architecture is perfect, fractal and efficient, ensuring that no single cell is ever too far from the sustenance it needs. The surface of the leaf, the part that faces the sun, is a masterpiece of solar engineering. It is dotted with thousands of tiny microscopic pores, valves known as stomata, in a slow and silent rhythm. Tied to the rising and setting of the sun, these pores open and close. When they open, they breathe in the carbon dioxide from the air around us, the very air we exhale. And when they close, they hold in precious water, preventing the leaf from drying out. And through these same invisible gateways, the leaf breathes out, releasing the oxygen that fills our skies and makes our world habitable. And at the very heart of this entire process, the engine that drives it all, is a molecule of almost magical power. The green pigment, chlorophyll. It is chlorophyll that gives the leaf its color. But it does so much more. It is a molecule that has learned how to capture sunlight, how to take the raw, unfiltered energy of a distant star and convert it into the substance of life. This process, photosynthesis, is the foundation of nearly every living thing on Earth. It is the quiet, alchemical reaction that turns light into matter, energy into being, not just for the plant, but for the entire world. And this incredible design is endlessly varied. Some leaves are built to track the sun as it moves across the sky, a slow, gentle turning called heliotropism, a silent, daily dance to maximize every last ray of light. Others have surfaces so perfectly structured that they repel water. Droplets bead up and roll away, carrying dust and spores with them. A self-cleaning miracle of microscopic architecture. And yes, as we have seen, some leaves are shaped to trap insects, others to store heat, or to survive the cold, or to endure the dryness of the desert. No two leaves in all the world are ever exactly the same. Not in their shape, their size, or the intricate pattern of their veins. Each one is a unique masterpiece. Fragile, beautiful, and alive with a quiet and unwavering purpose. Imagine walking along a quiet beach late at night. The sky is dark, the moon is hidden behind a thin veil of clouds. And as you approach the water's edge, you see the waves themselves glowing with an eerie, ethereal blue-green light. This phenomenon is real. It is not magic, and it is not a reflection. It is caused by tiny living things, microscopic organisms known as bioluminescent plankton. These single-celled creatures, drifting in the countless trillions through the world's oceans, possess a special kind of chemistry. When they are disturbed by the motion of a crashing wave, or the swirl of a swimmer's hand, or the path of a passing fish, they release a sudden, startling flash of cold, living light. It is not heat. It is a chemical reaction taking place inside their tiny bodies. The very same kind of glow used by fireflies in the soft, summer air. In certain places around the world, where these plankton are particularly dense, places like Mosquito Bay in Puerto Rico, or the shimmering shores of the Maldives, this glow can be so intense that it lights up entire coastlines, turning the dark sea into a shimmering, swirling dreamscape. Every splash, every movement, creates a constellation of momentary stars in the water. A boat moving through the sea leaves a glowing wake behind it. Dolphins can appear as streaks of living light as they swim through the depths. No electricity, no external power source, just biology. Bioluminescence has evolved independently, many times in Earth's deep oceans. It is used for everything, from camouflage to communication. From luring prey in the eternal darkness of the abyss, to startling predators with a sudden flash of light. And here, in the darkened tide, where the water meets the land, the sea offers a quiet, glowing reminder that even in the darkest of waters, life finds a way to make its own light, a way to shine. You might feel, in this moment, like a single person. One body, one mind, but in reality, in the most literal and biological sense, you are an entire living community. A walking, talking, breathing ecosystem. Because your body contains more microbial cells than human ones. Trillions upon trillions of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and archaea. They live on the surface of your skin, in the warm, moist environment of your mouth, and most of all, deep within your gut. This vast and complex collection of microscopic life is called your microbiome. And it is not just along for the ride. These tiny organisms are not passive passengers. They are an active, an essential part of who you are. They help you digest your food, breaking down complex fibers that your own body cannot. They train your immune system, teaching it how to distinguish between friend and foe. They produce essential vitamins that you cannot make on your own. And emerging research suggests they may even influence your mood and your behavior. In many ways, the microbiome is an extension of your body's own intelligence, a vast, invisible partner in nearly everything that you do. Some of these microbes are protective guardians, forming a living shield against harmful invaders. Others are fierce competitors, fighting for space and resources, and helping to keep dangerous pathogens in check. And just as no two human fingerprints are alike, your microbiome is uniquely and wonderfully yours. Shaped by your genetics, your diet, the environment you live in, and the life you have led. So the next time you feel alone, remember this: you are never truly by yourself. You are a planet in human form, a world within a world, home to a silent, teeming, and vital civilization of microscopic life that works in quiet partnership with you every single moment of your existence. In the humid, dappled light of the Central and South American rainforests, a living river flows across the jungle floor, a column of army ants constantly on the move, a colony of millions marching as one. They do not build permanent nests. Their home is the march itself, a relentless, nomadic search for food. But when this flowing river of ants reaches a gap in the forest floor, a small chasm, or a space between two leaves, they do not stop. They do not turn back. Instead, they do something that defies our sense of what an individual organism can do. They build a bridge, and they build it out of themselves. One ant, at the edge of the gap, will anchor itself firmly to a branch or a leaf. Another will climb over its back and anchor itself to the first. Then another, and another, and another, linking their bodies together with their legs and mandibles, until a living structure begins to form. A chain of ants stretching out over the empty space. Flexible and yet incredibly strong. Thousands upon thousands of ants may link together in this way, adjusting their positions in real time to support the weight and the traffic of the colony members marching over them. When the last of the colony has safely crossed, the bridge itself begins to disassemble. One by one, the ants that form the structure let go and rejoin the march. The most remarkable part of this feat is that there is no leader, no architect, no single ant directing the construction. These living bridges emerge spontaneously from local decisions. Each individual ant is simply responding to its neighbors, guided by the simple rules of instinct and physical contact. It is a stunning and almost unbelievable example of collective intelligence. A swarm acting as a single problem-solving entity, a shape-shifting structure made entirely of life, one body among many, all working as one, a quiet and powerful testament to the power of cooperation. In the silent, cool depths of the ocean, an octopus drifts like a creature from a dream, shape-shifting, color-shifting, watching the world with large, eerie, and unnervingly intelligent eyes. The octopus is already known as one of the most intelligent creatures on Earth, capable of solving complex puzzles using tools and learning through observation. But what lies beneath this clever behavior is even stranger. Something happening at a molecular level that sets the octopus apart from almost every other animal. Octopuses, along with their cousins, the squid and the cuttlefish, can edit their own RNA. To understand how remarkable this is, we have to remember the basics of genetics. DNA is the master blueprint, the stable, unchanging code that contains all the instructions for building and operating an organism. RNA is the messenger, a molecular script that carries those instructions from the DNA in the cell's nucleus out to the protein-making machinery. In most animals, this process is fixed. The RNA message is a faithful copy of the DNA blueprint. The genetic code you are born with is the code you are stuck with, but not for the octopus. Octopuses have the ability to make real-time adjustments to these RNA messages. They can swap out a single molecular letter here or there, effectively changing the instructions at the very last moment. This means they can fine-tune their own biology on the fly, altering how their neurons work in response to temperature changes, changing the way their eyes perceive light, adjusting their metabolism in response to stress. It is not the same as changing their fundamental DNA, but it gives them a level of biological flexibility that is almost unheard of in the animal kingdom. We do not yet fully understand why or how they do this so extensively, but it adds one more layer of deep mystery to a creature that already seems to have come from another world. A soft-bodied, 8-armed genius drifting silently through the water, rewriting its own biology, one molecule at a time. Imagine an animal looking at its own reflection. Most will see a rival, a stranger, a threat. They might attack the image or try to interact with it as if it were another creature. But very, very few seem to recognize it. Self-recognition in a mirror is an exceedingly rare ability in nature. It is often seen as a sign of a higher form of awareness, a sense of self. To test this, scientists use a simple but elegant experiment, the mirror test. An animal is discreetly marked with a spot of paint or dye on a part of its body it cannot see directly, like its forehead or its shoulder. The animal is then given access to a mirror. If, upon seeing its reflection, the animal tries to touch or investigate the mark on its own body and not on the mirror itself. It suggests that it understands that the image it is seeing is of itself. So far, only a very small and exclusive club of species has passed this test. All of the great apes, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans, bottlenose dolphins, Asian elephants, Eurasian magpies, and possibly manta rays, even some cleaner wrasse, a type of fish, have shown convincing signs of mirror self recognition. This does not mean that these animals have a human-style consciousness, or that they think about themselves in the same way that we do. But it does hint at something truly remarkable, that the spark of self-awareness may not be ours alone, that it might flicker in minds that are very, very different from our own. Across the vast and branching tree of life, the boundary between I and other might not be as clear as we once believed. Life on our planet is ancient, and it is astonishingly, unbelievably resilient. Over the past 500 million years, our world has experienced at least 5 great mass extinction events. Each one a global catastrophe that wiped out the overwhelming majority of species living at the time. The most devastating of these, known as the Permian-Triassic extinction, or the Great Dying, erased over 90% of all marine life and 70% of all life on land. These events were triggered by various causes. Massive volcanic eruptions that choked the skies with ash and altered the climate. Asteroid impacts that plunged the world into darkness. Sudden shifts in ocean chemistry or atmospheric composition. Each time, the world changed profoundly, and each time life somehow came back. Not the same life as before, of course, but something new. From the quiet ashes of extinction, ecosystems slowly and painstakingly reshaped themselves. Tiny, unassuming survivors that managed to cling to existence became the ancestors of new and sprawling lineages. It is a quiet and deeply humbling testament to the persistence of biology. Life doesn't just endure, it adapts, it evolves, it diversifies, it reinvents itself. We are a part of that very same story. We are here because our distant ancestors were survivors. Creatures who endured the darkness and the silence and the chaos, and somehow found a way forward. A single, unbroken thread of life stretching back through the eons, even through the greatest of catastrophes. In the shaded, damp stillness of a forest floor, a strange and unsettling drama unfolds. One that blurs the line between a living creature and a mindless puppet. Certain species of fungi, most famously a group known as Ophiocordyceps, are parasitic. They have evolved to infect specific species of insects, such as ants or caterpillars. When a microscopic spore from the fungus lands on an unsuspecting ant, it begins to germinate. It burrows through the ant's tough exoskeleton and begins to grow inside its body. The fungus infiltrates the ant's muscles, its tissues, and eventually, its brain. Once inside, the fungus does not kill its host. Not yet. Instead, it begins to release a complex cocktail of chemicals that alter the ant's behavior. It becomes a puppet master. The ant, now under the complete control of the fungus, will abandon its colony. It will leave the safety of its nest and the company of its kin. Driven by an impulse that is not its own, it will climb high up into the vegetation, up a blade of grass or the stem of a plant. It will find a spot, often on the underside of a leaf, at a specific height and orientation, where the temperature and humidity are just right for the fungus to thrive. Once it reaches this precise location, the ant performs its final act. It clamps its powerful mandibles deep into the tissue of the leaf, a death grip, and then it stops. It waits. Finally, the fungus kills its host, and then, in a final, macabre flourish, it sprouts. A long, thin stalk emerges from the back of the dead ant's head. This stalk, the fruiting body of the fungus, will then release a shower of new spores down onto the forest floor below, where they will wait to infect other unsuspecting ants that happen to pass by. It is a gruesome and chillingly precise cycle, one that has been honed over millions of years of evolution. Scientists still do not fully understand the exact mechanisms of this manipulation, how the fungus can so effectively and so specifically hijack the nervous system of its host. But in this quiet, biological war, even the smallest, most unassuming organisms can wield an astonishing and terrifying power. The forest is not always as green and peaceful as it seems. It is full of unseen strategies, some elegant, some cooperative, and some, like this one, are born of a darker, more patient kind of intelligence. Look around you. At the deep, endless blue of the daytime sky, at the shimmering surface of the ocean, at the iridescent flash of a butterfly's wings, or the feathers of a blue jay. Blue seems to be everywhere. And yet in the living, natural world, a true blue pigment is one of the rarest colors of all. Most of the blue things we see in nature are not blue because they contain a blue substance. They are blue because of physics. Most blue creatures, like the blue morpho butterfly, or peacocks, or blue jays, don't actually have any blue pigment in their cells. Instead, their color comes from their structure. The surfaces of their wings or their feathers are covered in microscopic, intricately layered patterns. Nanostructures, so small they are invisible to the naked eye. When light hits these surfaces, the tiny patterns bend and scatter the light waves in a very specific way. They are tuned to cancel out most colors of the spectrum, but to reflect and amplify only the blue wavelengths. This phenomenon is called structural coloration. It is, in essence, an optical illusion, a trick of the light, created by shape, not by dye. True blue pigments, the kind that absorb other colors and reflect blue, are chemically very complex and difficult for living organisms to produce. Very few have ever managed it. One of the rare exceptions is a small butterfly, the olivewing, which produces a genuine blue pigment. But for the most part, every flash of natural blue is a kind of magic trick, a delicate and beautiful interaction between the physics of light and the tiniest, most precise architecture of biology. So the next time you see a brilliant flash of blue in the wild, a feather, a wing, a fish's scale, remember that you are not just seeing color. You are seeing light itself dancing on the very edge of what life can build. Among the tall grasses and the dry, red dust of the African savanna, elephants do something that few other animals on Earth are known to do. They appear to mourn. When a herd of elephants comes across the bones of a deceased elephant, they do not simply pass by. They slow down. The entire herd grows quiet. They will often approach the remains and touch them gently with the sensitive tips of their trunks. They might caress a tusk or lift a skull. They linger sometimes for a long time, in a state of what seems to be a quiet and somber contemplation. Researchers have observed elephants returning to the same spot years later and gently examining the bones once more. Elephants have even been seen standing guard over a dying member of their family, staying nearby, refusing to leave, as if offering a final, silent comfort. Their grief may not be exactly like ours. We can never truly know what is happening inside the mind of another creature, but it appears to be something deeply and profoundly felt. Elephants form incredibly strong, lifelong family bonds. They remember old companions. They communicate with a complex language of rumbles and calls. And they seem to carry with them an emotional weight. It is a quiet and humbling truth, one that reminds us that empathy and loss and love may not belong only to humans. In the hearts of these great, gentle giants, something very old and very tender stirs, a recognition of life's fragility, its impermanence, a quiet and deeply moving acknowledgement of a life that is gone. They are among the most vibrant and biodiverse ecosystems on Earth. Underwater cities teeming with a riot of color and life, coral reefs. But they are not built by plants or carved from stone. They are built slowly and patiently by animals. Each individual coral structure is actually a colony of thousands or even millions of tiny creatures, little animals called polyps. Most are no bigger than a grain of rice. They are simple creatures, soft-bodied, with a ring of stinging tentacles surrounding a central mouth. At night, they extend these tentacles into the water to catch drifting plankton, and they build their homes by secreting a substance called calcium carbonate, the very same material that makes up limestone and seashells. They create a hard, stony skeleton, a cup-like structure to protect their soft bodies. And they live their entire lives in this tiny, stone home. As new polyps are born, they build their own skeletons on top of the old ones, layer upon layer, generation upon generation. Over hundreds and thousands of years, these tiny, accumulated skeletons form the massive, intricate structures that we call a reef. Structures so large they can stretch for hundreds of miles and can even be seen from space. And within the nooks and crannies of these living cities, life flourishes. Countless species of fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and sea turtles find food, shelter, and places to raise their young. Despite covering less than 1% of the entire ocean floor, coral reefs support nearly a quarter of all known marine life. They are the rainforests of the sea, living, breathing metropolises, built not by a grand design or a single architect, but by the slow, patient, and collective labor of millions upon millions of unseen, tiny builders, delicate, colorful, and deeply vulnerable. Reefs are a powerful reminder of how much life can rise from the smallest and most humble of hands. They look like something from a science fiction movie. A blob of brightly colored ooze creeping slowly across a decaying log on the forest floor. And in many ways, they behave like something from science fiction too. Slime molds. They are single-celled organisms that live in soil, on rotting wood, and in other damp, dark environments. For a long time, they were classified as fungi, but they are now known to belong to a kingdom all their own, and they possess a strange and mysterious kind of intelligence. A slime mold has no brain, it has no nervous system, it has no neurons at all, and yet it can solve a maze. In a famous laboratory experiment, scientists placed a slime mold at the entrance of a small maze. They placed a piece of its favorite food, oat flakes, at two of the exits. The slime mold began to grow. It spread out in all directions at once, sending tendrils of itself down every single corridor and every dead end of the maze, exploring its entire environment simultaneously. But then, once it found the food sources, it did something remarkable. It began to pull back. It retracted all of the tendrils that led to dead ends. It strengthened the connections that formed the most direct route between the two food sources, leaving behind only the single, most efficient path through the maze. It doesn't think. It doesn't plan. It doesn't see the whole picture. But somehow, through a complex system of chemical gradients and feedback loops, it figures it out. It is a kind of distributed intelligence, problem-solving, written into the very fabric of its body. Slime molds have even been used to model human transportation networks. When one was placed on a map of Japan, with food sources representing major cities, it grew a network of connections that was surprisingly similar to the actual Japanese rail system. It is a strange and mesmerizing reminder that intelligence comes in many, many forms, and not all of them need a brain. The Amazon rainforest is often called the lungs of the earth, a vast green expanse that breathes in carbon dioxide and breathes out the oxygen we need to survive. But it is more than just lungs. It is also the heart of a continental scale weather system. Because the Amazon doesn't just absorb the rain, it creates it. Each day as the powerful equatorial sun warms the vast green canopy, billions upon billions of trees draw water up from the soil through their roots. They release this moisture into the air as water vapor through the tiny pores in their leaves, a process called transpiration. This immense cloud of water vapor rises and cools and condenses into clouds. These clouds then drift on the wind and fall again as rain, often right back onto the forest that created them, feeding the very trees that will one day release the water back into the sky. It is a cycle so vast and so efficient that the Amazon rainforest generates a significant portion of its own weather. This self-sustaining loop, this system of flying rivers in the sky, helps to regulate the climate of an entire continent. It even influences weather patterns as far away as the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. The forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a single vast breathing system, a green engine that pumps moisture and breath and life into the air itself. And when parts of this system are lost through deforestation or fire, the cycle weakens, the pump falters, the rain lessens, and droughts begin to spread. The Amazon is not just a place on a map. It is a living, beating heart, pulsing with a quiet and steady rhythm that helps to shape the skies of our world. In the icy stillness of a northern winter, as temperatures drop far below freezing, some frogs undergo one of the most astonishing transformations in the entire animal kingdom. They freeze, not just slow down or become sluggish. They literally and completely turn to solid ice. The wood frog of North America can survive being frozen for days or even weeks at a time. Its heart stops beating, its breathing ceases, its blood turns to slushy ice, its internal organs shut down completely, and its body becomes stiff and brittle and cold. To all appearances, it is dead. But it is not. Thanks to a natural antifreeze, a high concentration of glucose and urea in its tissues, the frog's individual cells remain protected. These compounds prevent ice crystals from forming inside the cells, which would otherwise rupture and destroy them. The ice forms, but only in the spaces between the cells. And so the frog waits, a tiny frozen statue, hidden beneath the leaf litter. When spring finally returns and the temperatures begin to rise, the ice inside the frog begins to melt, and slowly, impossibly, the frog wakes up. Its heart begins to beat again, faintly at first, then stronger. Its lungs begin to draw breath, and within a few hours it is hopping away, as if nothing at all had happened. It is not a metaphor. It is a real, biological form of cryogenic survival, perfected by millions of years of evolution. Scientists study these frogs in the hopes of one day learning how to preserve human tissues, or even entire organs, for transplantation. For now, they remain quiet and profound miracles of adaptation. Tiny amphibians that can stare into the face of winter's grip and return, heartbeat by heartbeat, to the world of the living. Beneath the vast, silent surface of the sea, songs drift through the darkness, long, slow, and haunting melodies that travel for immense distances through the watery world. These are the calls of the blue whale, the largest animal that has ever lived. Their low-frequency vocalizations are among the loudest and deepest sounds made by any creature on Earth, so powerful that in the quiet, pressurized depths of the ocean, they can echo from one coast to another, traveling for thousands of miles. Whales use these songs for a multitude of reasons: to find and attract mates across the vast, empty expanses of the open ocean, to navigate, using the echoes of their own calls, to map the unseen topography of the seafloor, and to communicate, sharing information about their location, their identity, and perhaps much more that we do not yet understand. Each distinct population of whales has its own unique dialect, a specific set of songs that is different from other groups, and these songs are not static. They evolve over time, like living, oral traditions, passed down from one generation to the next, and from one whale to another. Some species, like the humpback whale, create long, complex, and intricately structured melodies, songs with repeating themes, phrases, and choruses. And these songs can shift from year to year, with different whales contributing new phrases or variations that are then adopted by the entire group. We do not fully understand everything they are saying. We cannot translate their language, but we know with certainty that these are not random sounds. They are messages, shared across a vast, watery world, among creatures who have roamed Earth's oceans for far longer than any human memory. A slow, deep, and patient conversation unfolding in the dark. Seeds are tiny, perfectly packaged time travelers. They may seem like simple, lifeless, and inert things, small specks of dust or hard, impenetrable shells. But inside each one, they carry the complete blueprint for life, and sometimes an almost unbelievable capacity for patience. Some seeds can remain dormant, not for weeks or months, but for decades, even centuries, waiting for the perfect and precise moment to sprout. In one of the most remarkable cases of this endurance, a date palm seed was discovered during an archaeological excavation at the ancient fortress of Masada in Israel. The seed was radiocarbon dated. It was found to be approximately 2,000 years old. It had lain dormant in the dry, stable earth since the time of the Roman Empire. In 2005, scientists decided to try and germinate it. They planted the ancient seed, and with just a little water and a little warmth it awoke, and it grew. Today, that tree, nicknamed Methuselah, is a healthy, thriving date palm. A living organism, born from a seed that slept through empires and wars and generations of human history. Other seeds have survived being frozen in the permafrost for thousands of years, or buried deep beneath meters of earth. They are equipped with tough, protective coats, complex internal chemistry that preserves their genetic material, and finely tuned sensitivities to their environment. They can detect changes in light, temperature, and moisture with incredible precision. And only when the moment is just right, not a moment before, do they begin their journey back into the world. In every single seed, there is a quiet and powerful promise. A promise that life can wait, that it can endure, and that it can always return. A single, tiny grain of stillness, holding the entire future within its silent shell. The gentle, flickering glow of a firefly on a warm summer evening. The shimmering, ghostly twinkle of plankton in the ocean surf. The eerie, dangling lure of a deep sea anglerfish in the crushing, eternal darkness of the abyss. These lights are not borrowed from the sun. They are not reflected from the moon. They are made by life itself. Bioluminescence, the ability of a living organism to produce its own light through chemical reactions, is one of nature's most enchanting and widespread inventions. It has not evolved just once. It has evolved independently, at least 40 and possibly as many as 50 separate times across the vast tree of life, from the simplest bacteria to complex fungi, from squid to jellyfish to worms to insects. Countless different organisms have found their own unique ways to glow. They use this light for an incredible variety of purposes. Some use it to attract prey, dangling a living light in the darkness to lure in smaller creatures. Others use it to warn predators, flashing a sudden, startling signal that they are toxic or unpleasant to eat. Some use it to find mates in the dark, blinking out complex, coded messages of courtship. And some use it to vanish in plain sight, a strategy called counter-illumination, where a creature on the underside of its body will produce a faint glow that perfectly matches the dim light filtering down from the surface, making it invisible to predators looking up from below. In the deep ocean, where sunlight never, ever reaches, bioluminescence is not the exception, it is the rule. A flickering, drifting, and ever-present constellation of living, breathing stars. The chemistry behind it is both simple and profoundly elegant. An enzyme called luciferase interacts with a light-producing molecule called luciferin. This reaction releases energy in the form of visible light. It is simple, silent, and absolutely stunning. A shared and universal language of glow that life has written again and again and again. In dark caves, in crashing waves, and in the furthest, most hidden corners of the world's darkness, it is not a metaphor. It is not poetry. It is a simple and profound statement of physics. The calcium in your bones, the very mineral structure that holds you upright and gives you form, was forged in the heart of an ancient and long dead star. In the final, fiery moments of a massive star's life, when it begins to run out of its primary fuel, it begins to fuse heavier and heavier elements in its core, a desperate cosmic alchemy driven by immense heat and crushing pressure. Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron. All the building blocks of our world are created in these stellar furnaces. When the star can no longer support its own weight, it collapses and then explodes in a cataclysmic event known as a supernova. In that single, blindingly brilliant moment, all of those newly forged elements are scattered across the vastness of space. For millions, or even billions of years, they drift as clouds of shimmering dust and glowing gas, mixing and swirling and settling, until gravity, patiently and relentlessly, pulls them back together once more. New stars are born from these clouds, and new planets form in the debris that orbits them. On one small, blue-green world, oceans rise, continents drift, and eventually life begins. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the carbon in your cells, the oxygen in your lungs. Every single atom in your body that is heavier than hydrogen or helium was born inside a star. You do not just live in the universe. The universe lives in you. You are a small piece of the cosmos, arranged in a pattern that is capable of thinking and breathing and wondering about its own origins. You are, quite literally and beautifully, made of stardust, walking on a world shaped by light and gravity and time. When you look at a flower, a bright yellow sunflower, or a soft red rose, you see color. But to many insects, especially bees, that same flower looks completely and utterly different. That is because bees, and many other insects, can see a part of the light spectrum that is entirely invisible to the human eye. Ultraviolet light. To a bee, a flower that appears to us as a plain, solid yellow might blaze with intricate, glowing patterns, hidden landing guides, radiant rings and bullseyes, all pointing the way to the sweet nectar and the protein-rich pollen that lies at the flower's center. These patterns are not just beautiful. They are profoundly functional. They have evolved over millions of years through a process of mutual benefit. The flower gets pollinated, allowing it to reproduce, and the bee gets a vital meal. Other insects use their UV vision for different purposes. To navigate, using the patterns of polarized light in the sky, to find mates who may have UV reflective markings on their wings, or to spot the webs of spiders, which can sometimes reflect ultraviolet light. Even the humble cabbage-white butterfly sees a world of patterns and shades that we cannot even begin to imagine. So, while we may share the same planet, we do not all share the same visual world. There is a hidden spectrum all around us, a secret layer of reality, filled with light and signs and colors that we will never be able to truly see. A quiet reminder that our perception of the world is just one of many. Deep in the heart of the vast and arid Australian outback, the kangaroo carries a remarkable secret, an ability to pause time inside its own body. When environmental conditions are harsh, when a long drought has made food and water scarce, or when a mother kangaroo is already busy raising a young joey in her pouch, she can delay the development of a newly fertilized egg. This incredible phenomenon is called embryonic diapause. The embryo, in its very earliest stages of development, simply stops growing. It enters a state of suspended animation, waiting patiently inside the mother's womb. This allows the mother to have one older joey that has already left the pouch but still nurses, one younger joey developing inside the pouch, and a third tiny embryo on pause, all at the same time. When food and water become available again, or when the pouch is vacated by the older sibling, a hormonal signal is sent, and the dormant embryo resumes its development. It is a brilliant and highly efficient strategy for survival in a beautiful but often unpredictable climate. This natural, biological pause button means that kangaroos can time their reproduction with an incredible and life-saving precision. In a land of extremes, of boom and bust, of flood and fire, nature has given them a quiet mastery over time, written directly into their very biology. In the colorful, chaotic, and bustling world of a coral reef, some fish carry a truly astonishing secret. They can change their sex. Clownfish, for example, made famous by films and aquariums, live in small, highly structured social groups. There is a strict hierarchy. The largest and most dominant fish in the group is the female, and only she breeds with the second largest fish, the dominant male. All the other, smaller clownfish in the anemone are sexually immature males. If the dominant female dies or is removed from the group, the dominant male undergoes a profound transformation. His body begins to change. His hormones shift, and he becomes the new, breeding female. The next largest male in the group then steps up to become the new dominant male. In other species of fish, like the vibrant and colorful wrasses, the change can happen in the other direction. In these groups, a dominant male will defend a harem of females. If that male disappears, the largest female in the harem can transform into a male and take his place. This transition is not just behavioral, it is deeply biological. Reproductive organs restructure, color patterns change, roles completely reverse. It is a natural and highly effective adaptation that helps to ensure the continuation of the species in dynamic and often dangerous environments. In the vast and fluid world of the ocean, identity is not always fixed. It can shift with need, with opportunity, or with the silent and ever-changing currents of chance. And in these quiet and profound transformations, we see just how flexible and endlessly surprising life can truly be. Every year, as the seasons turn, an ancient and powerful impulse takes hold. Birds, from the smallest warblers to the largest cranes, begin to travel. They journey for thousands upon thousands of miles across formidable mountains and vast, empty oceans, across entire continents, returning with a pinpoint and almost unbelievable precision to the very same nesting sites, the very same forests where they began their lives. How do they do it? How do they navigate this immense, three-dimensional world with no maps, no instruments, and no guides? One of the deepest secrets to this ability lies in a sense that we as humans can barely comprehend. They can feel the invisible forces that surround our planet. They can sense the Earth's magnetic field. All around us, unseen lines of magnetic force arc and flow from the North Pole to the South Pole. A vast, protective shield that cocoons our world. And many birds can perceive this field directly. There are two leading theories as to how they achieve this. The first is through tiny, microscopic crystals of a mineral called magnetite. These crystals, like the infinitesimal needles of a compass, are thought to be embedded in specialized cells within their beaks or their heads. As the bird flies, these magnetic particles would align themselves with the Earth's field, providing a constant internal sense of direction, a biological compass built directly into their own being. The second theory is even more strange and more beautiful. It suggests that some birds may be able to actually see the magnetic field. This would happen through a complex quantum process in their eyes. Specialized proteins in their retinas, called cryptochromes, are sensitive to light. When a photon of light strikes one of these proteins, it is thought to create a pair of electrons that are quantumly entangled. The Earth's magnetic field subtly influences how these electrons behave, and this influence could create a visual pattern overlaid on the bird's normal vision. A kind of filter, or a shimmering shadow in the sky, that changes depending on which direction the bird is facing. They might literally be able to see the lines of force guiding them home. This magnetic sense, this magnetoception, does not work alone. It is part of a sophisticated, multi-layered navigation system. It works alongside the position of the sun during the day, a kind of celestial clock, and the patterns of the stars at night, an ancient and reliable map, and the familiar shapes of the landscape below. It is a subtle and breathtakingly elegant system. An ancient map etched not onto paper, but into the very fabric of their nervous system. A quiet, unwavering sense of home, whispered to them by the planet itself. The Earth is alive, in more ways than we often realize, and one of its deepest, most fundamental rhythms is the constant, cyclical breathing of the element that forms the backbone of all life, the carbon cycle. Carbon moves through the air and the water, through plants and animals, and the very rocks beneath our feet. In a slow and deeply interconnected flow, imagine a single atom of carbon. When you breathe out, you release it into the air as a molecule of carbon dioxide. That same atom might then be taken in by a plant through a tiny pore on the surface of a leaf. Through the magic of photosynthesis, it is built into a molecule of sugar. It becomes a part of the leaf, the stem, the root. An animal might then come along and eat that plant. The carbon atom is now part of the animal's body. When that animal breathes, it might be released back into the air. Or, when the animal or the plant dies, decomposers like bacteria and fungi will break down its body, returning the carbon to the soil or the atmosphere. This cycle moves not just through living things, but through the planet itself. Volcanoes emit vast amounts of carbon that was once trapped deep within the Earth. The oceans absorb it from the atmosphere, where some of it sinks to the deep sea floor, becoming part of the sediment, part of the rock. Some of this carbon, over millions of years, becomes fossil fuels, the stored sunlight and biomass of ancient forests. This global exchange, this planetary breathing, helps to regulate the Earth's climate. It supports all life. It shapes entire ecosystems. It is a cycle that moves, not just through days and years, but through deep geological oons. And right now, in our current time, that ancient rhythm is out of balance, tilted by human activity, releasing ancient carbon back into the atmosphere faster than the planet can absorb it. Understanding this cycle helps us to see the Earth not as a static, inert ball of rock, but as a single dynamic and breathing system. In and out, light and dark, growth and decay. A living organism quietly spinning in the vastness of space. Before the first plants took root on the land, before the first animals swam in the seas, even before the atmosphere was filled with the oxygen we breathe, they were here. Bacteria, and some of them were the very first builders, the very first architects of Earth's surface. Stromatolites are strange, rock-like formations found in the shallow, salty waters of a few remote places around the world. They look like lumpy, layered domes of stone growing up from the seabed. But they are not rock, they are alive. Or rather, they are built by living things. They are made by vast communities of cyanobacteria, the same microscopic organisms that changed our planet's atmosphere. These microbes form sticky, mat-like colonies. As tiny particles of sediment in the water drift and settle, they become trapped in this sticky, microbial film. The bacteria then grow upwards through the sediment towards the sunlight they need to survive, creating a new, sticky layer on top. This process repeats over and over and over, layer by tiny, infinitesimal layer, over thousands of years. This slow accumulation of sediment and microbial life builds up into the solid, stony structures we see today. Fossilized stromatolites are among the oldest evidence of life ever discovered on Earth. Some date back over 3.5 billion years. These simple, microbial communities not only helped to shape the planet's early surface, they terraformed its atmosphere, pumping out the oxygen that would, billions of years later, pave the way for the evolution of complex life. Today, living stromatolites can still be found in places like Shark Bay in Western Australia. They are living fossils, a direct and unbroken link to the dawn of life on our planet. They stand as quiet, strange, and profoundly ancient monuments. Monuments to the world's very first engineers, builders without tools, architects without eyes, just patient, persistent, microscopic life, laying the silent groundwork for all that was to follow. In the shimmering, blue-green world of the ocean, dolphins communicate with a complex and beautiful language of clicks and whistles and chirps. But amidst this symphony of sound, there is something even more remarkable, something that hints at a level of social intelligence that is rarely seen outside of our own species. They seem to have names. Each individual dolphin develops a unique, signature whistle early in its life, a specific and personal melody that is its own acoustic identifier. It is, in essence, its name. Other dolphins in its social group learn and remember this whistle, and they use it to call out to specific individuals. It is not just mimicry, it is true recognition. When researchers have recorded a dolphin's signature whistle and played it back underwater, the specific dolphin whose name was called will often respond, just as a person might turn their head when they hear their own name being called across a room. This behavior suggests a level of social memory and individual identity that was once thought to be uniquely human. Dolphins live in complex, fluid, and ever-changing social groups. Being able to identify and keep track of specific individuals is crucial for maintaining bonds, managing relationships, and navigating their complex social world. In the deep, sun-dappled waters of the ocean, dolphins are speaking to one another. And in their calls, we glimpse something truly astonishing. The roots of language, the concept of you and me, echoing beneath the quiet waves. Today, the Sahara Desert stretches across North Africa like a vast golden sea, an endless expanse of sand and rock, scorched by the sun. One of the hottest and driest places on Earth, but not so long ago. In the grand scheme of geological time, it was something else entirely. Roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, much of what is now the Sahara was green. It was a lush, vibrant paradise. Rain fell regularly. Great rivers, larger than any that exist today, flowed across the landscape. Vast, freshwater lakes shimmered in the sun. Wildlife roamed across grasslands and savannas. Elephants, crocodiles, giraffes, and hippos all lived there, and so did humans. Ancient rock art, found in caves and on cliffs deep within the modern desert, depicts a world of abundant life. Paintings of people swimming, herding cattle, and hunting in a green and fertile landscape. This remarkable period is known as the African humid period. It was driven by subtle, cyclical shifts in the Earth's orbit around the Sun. These shifts altered the strength and location of the seasonal monsoons, bringing life, giving rains, far deeper into the African continent. Eventually, as the Earth's orbit continued its slow and patient cycle, the rains began to fade, and the desert return. But deep beneath the endless sands lie the remnants of this lost world. Ancient dried-up lake beds, fossilized trees, and the buried evidence of a world utterly transformed. The Sahara is not just a desert. It is a memory, a quiet and powerful reminder that even the harshest, most forbidding landscapes on our planet were once soft and green and alive, and that they might one day be so again. They are tiny, they buzz, and they are essential to the pollination of our world. But bees can also do something that until recently was thought to be the exclusive domain of highly intelligent primates. They seem to understand the concept of zero, the idea of nothing. In a series of clever experiments, scientists trained bees to associate a smaller quantity of shapes with a sweet, sugary reward. For example, they would be shown 2 cards, one with 3 squares and one with 4. If they flew to the card with 3 squares, the smaller number, they would get the reward. They learned this task quickly. But then, the scientists introduced a new choice. They presented the bees with a card that had 1 square and a card that was completely blank, a card with 0 squares. The bees correctly and consistently chose the blank card. This suggests that they understand the abstract idea that known is less than some. That 0 belongs on a numerical line. This kind of advanced numerical reasoning has only been demonstrated in a few other animals, like chimpanzees, dolphins, and some parrots. That bees, with their brains the size of a pinhead, can do the same is truly remarkable. It hints at a form of intelligence that is not limited by brain size, but is instead shaped by evolutionary need and efficiency. Inside a buzzing hive, thousands of tiny minds work together as one. But even the individual bee holds profound surprises, a small body and a brilliant, quietly calculating mind. When wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone National Park in the United States in the mid-1990s, after being absent for nearly 70 years, something incredible and entirely unexpected happened. They didn't just affect the populations of the animals they hunted. They reshaped the entire physical landscape. When the wolves were gone, the elk and deer populations had exploded. They grazed heavily, especially along the river banks, eating the young willow and aspen saplings before they could grow into mature trees. But when the wolves returned, everything began to change. They began to hunt the elk. But more importantly, they changed the behavior of the elk. The elk started to avoid the valleys and gorges, the places where they could be most easily trapped by a wolf pack. And in those places, the vegetation began to recover. The willow and aspen saplings started to grow into tall, healthy trees. The forests along the river banks began to regenerate. And as the trees returned, so did the birds. Songbirds, migratory birds, all found new homes in the recovering forests. And as the willow trees grew, the beavers returned. Beavers are ecosystem engineers. They built dams, which created ponds and wetlands. These new habitats provided homes for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish. But the changes went even deeper. The recovering plant life, the new forests of trees and shrubs, stabilized the riverbanks. Their roots held the soil together, reducing erosion. This, in turn, changed the very shape of the rivers themselves. In some places, the rivers became more narrow and more meandering. Their channels became more fixed. Pools and riffles formed. The water began to flow differently. This entire cascading sequence of events is known as a trophic cascade. It shows how a single species, especially a top predator, can have a ripple effect that travels down through every level of an ecosystem. The wolves, by simply being wolves, by simply doing what wolves do, created a chain reaction that transformed the forests, the waterways, and the populations of countless other animals. It is a powerful and beautiful reminder that nature is profoundly interconnected in ways that we often cannot see. Every creature, no matter how large or small, plays a vital role, sometimes subtle, sometimes, like the wolves of Yellowstone, profound. And in the distant, haunting howl of a returning wolf, the land itself begins to heal. We often think of flowers as passive objects of beauty, colorful, fragrant, and perfectly still. But some flowers are listening. Recent research has shown that certain plants can actually respond to the sound of a pollinator, specifically the gentle, low-frequency buzz of a bee's wings. In one study, scientists found that when a bee approaches a particular type of flower, the evening primrose, the flower can detect the vibration of its wing beats in the air. And in response, within just a few minutes, the flower begins to produce a significantly sweeter nectar. The flower doesn't have ears, of course, not in the way that we do, but its delicate petals are shaped in such a way that they can vibrate in response to specific sound frequencies, acting as a kind of whole body sensory organ. This incredible ability helps the plant to conserve its resources. It doesn't waste energy producing extra, sweet nectar all day long. Instead, it offers a better, more enticing reward at the exact moment when a pollinator is nearby. It is a quiet and subtle dialogue. The bee hums a question, and the flower answers with sweetness. This discovery of subtle acoustic awareness adds another beautifully complex layer to our growing understanding of plant behavior. Even without nerves or muscles or brains, plants can sense and respond and adapt to their environment in real time. The garden, it turns out, is not silent at all. It is full of delicate, humming conversations that we are only just beginning to overhear. On the rough surfaces of stones, on the bark of ancient trees, and on the windswept cliffs of high mountains, you will find lichens, simple, crusty, and often colorful patches of life, clinging tenaciously to the surface. But these quiet and unassuming organisms hold a surprising and profound truth. They are not one single life form. They are two, or sometimes even three, different species living together as one. A lichen is a symbiotic partnership, a composite organism born from the union of a fungus, and a photosynthetic partner, usually an alga or a cyanobacterium. The fungus provides the physical structure. The house, its tough, filamentous body, protects the partnership from the harsh elements, from drying out, from too much sun. It anchors the lichen to the surface. The photosynthetic partner, the alga or the cyanobacterium, provides the food. Using sunlight, air, and water, it creates sugars that feed both itself and the fungus. Together, this blended life form can survive in some of the most extreme and inhospitable places on Earth. From the frozen, Arctic tundra to the scorching heat of dry deserts, places where neither partner could possibly survive on its own. It is not always a gentle and equal partnership. Sometimes, the fungus seems to dominate, acting more like a farmer, shaping and controlling its algal partner. But the result is an incredible and profound resilience. Lichens are ancient and incredibly stable. They grow with extreme slowness, sometimes less than a millimeter a year, and they are essential to many ecosystems. They are pioneer species, the first to colonize bare rock, slowly breaking it down with weak acids and creating the very first traces of soil. They provide food and shelter for countless small creatures. Two entirely different species, from two entirely different kingdoms of life, living as one. A quiet and patient collaboration written into the very surface of the world. They are microscopic, squishy, and under a high-powered lens, surprisingly cute. But tardigrades, also known as water bears, are among the toughest, most resilient organisms on our planet. We have met them before in our journey, surviving the vacuum of space. But their resilience goes even deeper. Tardigrades can endure conditions that seem to belong more to the realm of science fiction than to biology. Freezing, boiling, intense radiation, crushing pressure, and total, complete dehydration. They have been found on the highest mountain tops, at the bottom of the deepest oceans, and frozen deep within the solid ice of glaciers. When the conditions of their environment become too harsh, they curl into a tiny, dormant state called a ton, essentially hitting a pause button on life itself. In this desiccated and seemingly lifeless state, their metabolism can drop to almost zero. They can survive for decades, perhaps even centuries. Some scientists believe that tardigrades are so incredibly durable that they could even survive global mass extinction events. Events that would wipe out almost all larger and more complex life forms. From massive asteroid impacts to the deadly radiation from a nearby supernova. They are not invincible, of course. They can be eaten or physically destroyed. But they are astonishingly and beautifully prepared for the worst. In the quiet, unseen corners of the world, in a drop of dew on a leaf or a speck of dust in the wind, the water bear waits, tiny, almost eternal, and always, always ready to begin again. They are strange, wrinkled, and live their entire lives in vast, underground colonies in the drylands of East Africa. But naked mole rats are one of the most biologically fascinating and mysterious mammals alive, because unlike almost every other creature, they seem to defy the normal patterns of aging. For most mammals, including humans, the risk of dying increases exponentially as we get older. But for naked mole rats, this does not appear to be the case. Their mortality risk does not seem to increase at all as they age. They are also incredibly resistant to cancer, one of the most common age-related diseases. They can tolerate environments with extremely low oxygen, similar to what might be found in a poorly ventilated burrow. And they can live for up to 30 years. An incredibly and almost impossibly long time for a rodent of their size. Their cells remain remarkably stable throughout their lives. Their proteins resist damage. In fact, a 5-year-old mole rat looks and behaves very much like a 25-year-old one. Internally, at least. They live in complex, underground societies, with a social structure that is more similar to insects than to mammals. There is a single, breeding queen, who is the only female to reproduce. The other members of the colony are workers or soldiers. Scientists are studying them intensely, searching for clues about longevity, cancer resistance, and the secrets to healthy aging. In the dim, silent tunnels deep beneath the earth, these strange, soft-skinned creatures lead their quiet and hidden lives, carrying within their small bodies biological secrets that may one day help us all. You are made of stardust and stories, and also of about 30 trillion cells. Every breath you take, every thought you have, every beat of your heart is the coordinated work of countless microscopic parts, each one with its own specific role. Muscle cells, long and fibrous, contracting and relaxing to create movement. Neurons with their branching tree-like arms, firing tiny electrical signals to form thoughts and memories. Red blood cells, small and disc-shaped, carrying life, giving oxygen to every corner of your body. Skin cells, flat and layered, constantly renewing themselves to form a protective barrier against the outside world. Gut cells, specialized to absorb nutrients. Immune cells, the vigilant guardians, patrolling for invaders. Together, these trillions of diverse and specialized cells form a single, unified body. One being made of a multitude of many. But your body is also in a constant state of flux, of movement and renewal. Cells are constantly dying and being replaced. You rebuild yourself, piece by piece, day by day. You are not a static object, you are a living, breathing symphony of cellular cooperation. And still, somehow, through a miraculous and complex system of signals and feedback, it all works in a delicate and beautiful balance. Even now, as you rest, millions upon millions of cells are working quietly, diligently, to keep you whole. You are not one thing. You are a community, a miracle of coordination, humming softly and silently beneath your skin. They are colorful, talkative, and often endearingly playful. But parrots are also among the most startlingly intelligent animals on the entire planet. Studies have shown that some species, particularly the African grey parrot, possess cognitive abilities that rival those of a young human child. They can count. They can understand abstract concepts like same and different. And some have even shown a grasp of the concept of zero. One of the most famous parrots in scientific history was an African grey named Alex. Over several decades of study, Alex learned to identify more than 50 different objects. He could recognize 7 colors and 5 shapes. He could understand quantities up to 6. He could ask for what he wanted with simple vocal requests. He could express frustration. And he could answer complex, abstract questions. If shown a tray of different colored and shaped blocks, you could ask him, "How many green squares?" And he could look, scan the objects, and give you the correct answer. In many of these cognitive tasks, he performed on par with, or even better than, a human toddler. Parrots use this powerful intelligence in the wild too, for solving complex foraging problems, for navigating intricate social groups, and in some cases, even for using simple tools. Their brains are structured very differently from ours. They have no neocortex, the part of the human brain associated with higher order thinking. But evolution, it seems, has found a parallel path to a similar kind of brilliance. So when a parrot speaks, it may not just be mimicking sounds, it may also be thinking. Bright feathers and even brighter minds. A little bird that just might be smarter than you think. We walk the land. We build our cities on it. We live our lives beneath the vast, open sky. And so it is easy to imagine that most of Earth's life is here with us. But the vast majority of all living things, the greatest mass of biological matter on our planet, is hidden beneath the quiet, shimmering surface of the waves. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, and in its depths, its currents, and its sunlit upper layers, it contains the overwhelming majority of all living biomass, from the tiniest, most numerous plankton, so small they are invisible to the naked eye, to the blue whale, the largest creature to have ever existed, from ethereal, glowing jellies drifting in the eternal darkness, to vast underwater forests of kelp swaying in the coastal currents. Marine life thrives in forms almost too numerous to count, and in places too strange to imagine. Coral reefs, bursting with a kaleidoscope of life. The vast, seemingly empty expanses of the open water, teeming with a soup of microscopic organisms. And the deep, crushing trenches, where strange and wonderful creatures live in total darkness and under immense pressure. Each unique environment supports its own unique community. Even a single drop of seawater, as we have learned, can contain thousands of microscopic beings. And we have only just begun to explore it. It is estimated that we have explored less than 10% of the deep ocean. Much of it remains untouched, unseen, and deeply mysterious, brimming with forms of life that we have not yet even discovered. The sea is not empty space. It is teeming. It is saturated with life. A vast, living, breathing world, pulsing just beneath the surface. The greatest and wildest wilderness on Earth is blue. In a quiet, unassuming grove of trees, in the state of Utah in the United States, stands what may be the oldest and most massive known living organism on Earth. At first glance, it does not look ancient or particularly special. It looks simply like a forest. A cluster of ordinary, slender, trunked trees with small, trembling leaves that shimmer in the wind. But beneath the surface of the soil, all of these trees are connected. This is Pando, a clonal colony of quaking aspen trees. Each trunk that you see rising from the ground, each seemingly individual tree, is genetically identical to all the others. They are all part of a single, colossal, interconnected root system. Pando did not grow from seeds. Instead, it reproduces by sending up new stems, new trunks, from its sprawling underground roots. Generation after generation after generation, forming a living, breathing forest that is, in fact, made of just one single tree. Individual trunks may die after 100 years or so, but the organism as a whole, the vast root system, endures. It is estimated to be over 80,000 years old. That means it began growing during the last ice age, when woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats still walked the earth. It has survived unimaginable changes in climate. It has endured storms and fires and the slow, patient passage of time itself. A single, silent being spread across more than 100 acres of land. A forest that is also an individual. Ancient, quiet and still, very much alive. Rooted deeply in one place, and reaching, always and forever, towards the sky. When we think of viruses, we usually, and quite understandably, think of illness. But not all viruses are harmful. Some play essential and often surprising roles in shaping life, evolution, and even our own health. Certain viruses, known as bacteriophages, specifically hunt and attack bacteria. In the complex ecosystem of the human gut, these viruses help to maintain a healthy microbial balance by keeping certain bacterial populations in check. Other viruses can influence gene expression in their hosts, or insert useful pieces of DNA into our own genomes. In fact, a significant portion of the human genome, nearly 8%, is made up of the remnants of ancient viral DNA, the genetic code of retroviruses that infected our distant ancestors millions of years ago. Their DNA became a permanent and heritable part of our own. Most of these ancient viral genes are now dormant, fossilized echoes of infections long past. But some have been repurposed by evolution and are now vital to our own biology, playing important roles in everything from brain development to the formation of the placenta during pregnancy. Viruses are not just invaders. They are a fundamental part of life's history and a driver of its future. Tiny molecular threads woven deeply into the very fabric of who we are, not only as threats, but sometimes as silent and unwitting allies. Sharks are often seen as modern, perfectly evolved predators, sleek, fast, and ruthlessly efficient. But their lineage is far, far older than it appears. Sharks have been swimming in Earth's oceans for over 400 million years. To put that into perspective, trees, as we know them, only appeared on the land around 350 million years ago. That means sharks were already ancient, long before the first forests ever grew. They were here before the dinosaurs. They survived the asteroid that wiped the dinosaurs out. They have lived through all 5 of the great mass extinctions. Their basic body plan, the classic, torpedo-like shape of a predator, has changed very little over that immense span of time. A testament to just how effective and how well adapted they are. Modern sharks come in hundreds of different forms, from the gentle, plankton-eating whale shark, the largest fish in the sea, to the strange and wonderful hammerheads, and the tiny, glowing lantern sharks that live in the deep, dark ocean. But all of them carry the same profound legacy of deep geological time, a lineage almost unimaginably old. Each silent glide through the water is a movement shaped by oons. Quiet, steady, and profoundly, and beautifully enduring. Rainforests are not just shaped by the weather. As we have seen with the Amazon, they help to create it. Every day, the billions of trees in a rainforest draw vast quantities of water up from the soil. They release this water vapor into the air, through the leaves, in the process of transpiration. This moisture rises into the atmosphere, and it doesn't just rise on its own. The trees also release tiny, microscopic particles into the air, pollen, fungal spores, and volatile organic compounds. These particles act as seeds for clouds, water vapor in the air, condenses around them, forming the tiny droplets that create clouds. In places like the Amazon, this constant and efficient cycling of water helps to sustain the life-giving rainfall, not just locally over the forest itself, but across entire regions. When the forest is healthy, it supports its own climate, a self-perpetuating system of moisture and life. But when the trees are lost, the effect is profound and deeply worrying. Less moisture being released into the air means fewer clouds can form. And fewer clouds, eventually, means less rain. A dangerous feedback loop can be triggered. A tipping point where the forest can no longer generate enough rainfall to sustain itself. Rainforests are not passive landscapes. They are the great green engines of the atmosphere, breathing out mist and cloud and the very substance of life. When you stand beneath the dense, dappled canopy of a rainforest, you are standing in the breathing heart of a continent, in the warm, shallow coastal waters around the world. One small creature practices a quiet and rather theatrical kind of camouflage. Decorator crabs. These crabs don't just blend into their environment by changing their color. They physically and deliberately become a part of it. Using their small, nimble claws, they carefully pick up bits and pieces of their surroundings. Small fragments of algae, seaweed, and even living animals like sponges and sea anemones. They attach these items to their own shells using special, hook-like hairs called seta. Some decorator crabs will even carefully place a living sponge right onto their own backs. The sponge continues to grow as the crab moves about. This living costume serves multiple purposes. It provides excellent visual camouflage, hiding the crab from predators and from prey. It can also provide chemical protection. The sponge or anemone may release toxins or have an unpleasant taste, making the crab a much less appetizing meal. It is a fascinating collaboration. Not quite true symbiosis, but something very close. A moving reef. A creature that wears its own living home, like a constantly changing and perfectly adapted costume. In the quiet, sunlit waters of the shallows, disguise becomes a form of living art. The world, as we perceive it, belongs to us. We build our cities and draw our maps, and we imagine ourselves to be the dominant form of life on this planet. But this is a gentle illusion of scale, because the world, in truth, belongs to the insects. For every single human being on Earth, it is estimated that there are at least 200 million insects. It is a number so vast, it becomes an abstraction, a quantity that the human mind cannot truly hold. Imagine the entire human population of the planet. Every city, every town, every person. And then imagine that for each one, there is a sprawling, bustling metropolis of 200 million tiny, six-legged beings. They live in every conceivable ecosystem on Earth. In places we could never survive. In the steamy, dripping, uppermost canopy of the rainforest. In the frozen, wind-scarred silence of the Arctic tundra. In the shimmering, scorching heat of the desert sands. And on the salty, wave-battered shores of the ocean. Beetles alone make up nearly a quarter of all known animal species on Earth. A single, endless parade of forms. Armored and iridescent, horned and spotted, tiny and colossal. Insects are the invisible and tireless engines of our world. They pollinate the crops that feed us in a delicate, ancient dance between flower and wing. They recycle nutrients, breaking down dead wood and fallen leaves and returning them to the soil. The quiet, tireless architects of renewal. They are the foundation of countless food chains feeding birds and fish and mammals and each other. And they are ancient. They have been here for over 400 million years. They were among the very first creatures to crawl onto the land, the very first to take to the air. They survived every single one of the great mass extinctions. They felt the ground shake with the footsteps of giants now long gone to dust. Their lifespans can be impossibly brief, a few fleeting minutes or hours, or astonishingly long, decades spent waiting patiently underground. They build cities in the form of towering, air-conditioned termite mounds, cathedrals of soil and saliva. They wage wars in the disciplined, flowing rivers of army ants, and some of them even farm, tending to underground fungal gardens or herding tiny aphids like cattle. Their societies can be deeply complex, their adaptations seemingly endless. Though they are small, they are profoundly and unimaginably mighty, shaping the world in countless ways that most of us will never see. We may rule the land in our own minds, but the insects were here long before us, and they will likely be here long, long after we are gone. The quiet, ubiquitous, and ever-present hum of the planet's true and deep rhythm. From the teeming, unseen world of the insects, we drift now to a place of almost impossible and spectacular beauty. Deep in the remote and ancient rainforests of New Guinea and its nearby islands live the birds of paradise. Their feathers shimmer with colors that seem to defy reality, metallic blues that shift to vibrant greens, fiery velvet oranges, and the deepest, most light-absorbing blacks in the entire animal kingdom. Some sprout long, delicate plumes that cascade like ethereal streamers. Others unfold vast, iridescent fans, or bounce on long wire, like tail feathers. But it is not just their breathtaking appearance that makes them so extraordinary. It is what they do with it. The male birds of paradise perform some of the most elaborate and bizarre and beautiful courtship dances in all of nature. Each of the roughly 40 different species has its own unique and highly choreographed routine. They meticulously prepare their own stage. A specific branch or a cleared patch of the forest floor, and then the performance begins. They hop and spin and bow. They hang upside down, fanning their feathers into strange, geometric shapes. They puff out their chests and pose in precise, sculptural sequences. Their dances are often accompanied by a symphony of strange sounds, loud clicks, whistles, and the rustling flutter of their specialized wings. The females watch from above or from the sidelines, acting as silent and discerning judges. They are choosing their mates based almost entirely on the quality and artistry of the performance. This intense and relentless process of female selection has driven the evolution of some of the most extravagant and seemingly impractical traits in the entire animal kingdom. Behind every shimmering feather and every precise dance move is a quiet story of millions of years of patience, of showmanship, and of life's wild and untamable creativity. In these strange and beautiful courtship rituals, we glimpse evolution's profound flair for the dramatic and nature's deep and abiding love of spectacle. In the quiet, dusty corners of an attic, in the branches of a garden tree, or stretched invisibly across a garden gate, spiders spin something that is both a delicate work of art and a marvel of material science. Their silk, drawn from their own bodies, in long, impossibly thin and shimmering strands, It is among the strongest and most versatile materials in all of nature. Weight for weight, a strand of spider silk is stronger than a strand of steel. And it is far, far more flexible. It can stretch to an incredible degree without breaking, absorbing enormous amounts of energy. This combination of strength and elasticity is what allows a spider's web to catch a flying insect without snapping. Each thread is made from complex protein molecules, arranged in a precise and microscopic pattern of crystals and amorphous chains, assembled with a perfect and innate precision. And different spiders produce many different kinds of silk, each with its own specific purpose. Sticky, capture silk for trapping prey. Strong, non-sticky dragline silk for the web's frame and for a safety line. Soft, fluffy silk for wrapping and protecting their precious eggs. Some spiders can even spin silk underwater, or use it to create a balloon, to catch the wind and glide for miles through the air. Scientists and engineers are studying spider silk intensely, hoping to one day replicate its properties for use in everything from medical sutures and artificial ligaments to bulletproof materials and lightweight, super strong engineering cables. But for now, in the quiet corners of our world, the spider spins on, quietly and patiently, crafting miracles of biological engineering from within its own small body, one single, silky, and almost invisible thread at a time. On warm and humid summer nights, as dusk settles over fields and forests, the darkness comes alive with tiny drifting and gentle flashes of light. Fireflies, also known in many places as lightning bugs. They are not flies or bugs, they are a type of beetle. And they are communicating with a silent and beautiful language made of light. These bioluminescent signals are not random flickers. They are precise, coded messages, blinking patterns that vary by species, by region, and even by gender. The males typically fly through the air, flashing a specific, rhythmic pattern. A question written in light. I am here. I am a member of our species. The females, often waiting in the grass or on the leaves of trees, will respond with their own perfectly timed reply. A flash that says, I am here too. I am ready. It is a courtship dialogue, a conversation unfolding in the warm summer darkness. Some species blink slowly and deliberately. Others flash in rapid, stuttering bursts. A few emit a soft and continuous steady glow. Inside a special organ in their abdomen, fireflies mix a chemical called luciferin with an enzyme called luciferase and with oxygen. The result of this reaction is the creation of cold light, a process so efficient that it produces almost no heat at all. It is one of nature's quietest and most enchanting conversations. But fireflies also use their light to warn predators. Some species are mildly toxic, or at least, they taste very bitter. Their gentle, flickering glow is both a thing of beauty and a clear and honest signal. A living, breathing language of flashes that dances softly through the silent, summer dark. In the dense and vibrant forests of Africa and South America, some monkeys and apes do more than just eat the plants around them. They appear to use them as medicine. Researchers have observed chimpanzees and other primates deliberately seeking out and consuming bitter, non-nutritive plants. Plants that they would normally avoid, but only when they are sick or injured. They have been seen to chew on the pith of specific stems, to swallow certain rough, hairy leaves whole, or to rub particular substances onto their skin and fur. And many of these plants, when analyzed in a lab, are found to contain potent and effective chemical compounds. Antibacterial, antifungal, or anti-parasitic properties. One of the most well-documented examples is of chimpanzees suffering from intestinal parasites. They will often seek out and swallow the whole, undigested leaves of a specific plant. The leaves themselves are not digestible, but their rough, bristly surface seems to act as a kind of physical scar that purges the worms from their digestive tract. This fascinating behavior is known as zoopharmacognosy, animal self-medication. It challenges the long-held idea that only humans have developed and use healing remedies. We do not know for sure if this knowledge is purely instinctive, or if it is learned behavior passed down from mother to infant, or perhaps a combination of both. But it reveals a hidden and profound intelligence among the branches and the leaves and the flowers of the forest. A quiet and powerful pharmacy waits, and some animals already know how to use it. Every single breath you take is a quiet gift, not just from the great green forests of the land, but from the vast, unseen meadows of the ocean. Tiny, microscopic, and single-celled organisms, called phytoplankton, drift in the sunlit upper layers of the sea. In numbers that are almost beyond counting, these tiny algae perform photosynthesis, just like the plants on land. They absorb the energy of the sun. They take in carbon dioxide from the water, and as a byproduct, they release oxygen. Despite their microscopic size, the sheer, unimaginable number of these organisms means that they produce more than half of all the breathable oxygen on our planet. More than all the rainforests and grasslands and forests of the world combined. They form the invisible, yet essential foundation of nearly all marine food chains, providing the primary source of food that supports everything from tiny krill to the largest whales. But their role in shaping our atmosphere is just as vital. Without these tiny, drifting sun worshippers, the delicate balance of gases in our air would change profoundly, and so too would our climate. Phytoplankton are deeply sensitive to changes in the ocean's temperature, its currents, and its chemistry. They are the silent and tireless lungs of the blue part of our world. You cannot see them from the shore, but they are always there, a shimmering, invisible cloud of life, suspended just beneath the waves. With each quiet and easy exhale, remember that the ocean is breathing with you. In the quiet corners of our cities and the wild edges of our forests, crows go about their day with a sense of purpose and a remarkable and sometimes unsettling intelligence. These birds, members of the highly intelligent corvid family, have been observed to possess cognitive abilities that were once thought to belong only to humans and great apes. One of the most astonishing of these is their ability to plan for the future. They have been seen to save and store tools for later use, to hide food in a multitude of secure and secret places, and to remember where each one is, and even to barter for better rewards. In one famous series of experiments, crows were given a choice. They could take a small, less tasty treat that was available immediately, or they could choose a special token which they could then exchange a few moments later for a much more desirable, high-quality treat. The crows consistently chose the token, demonstrating not only an understanding of delayed gratification, but the ability to plan ahead and to understand the value of a tool in achieving a future goal. They have been observed to use sticks, to fish insects out of crevices, to bend pieces of wire into hooks, to retrieve a bucket of food from a tube, and to show a clear understanding of cause and effect. They can even remember the faces of individual human beings who have threatened them or been unkind to them, and they will hold a grudge, sometimes for years, scolding and mobbing that specific person whenever they see them. Their intelligence in some specific domains rivals that of a 7-year-old child. And unlike many animals who seem to live entirely in the present moment, crows appear to think ahead. They are not just acting on impulse, they are planners, problem solvers, and keen observers. Quiet, intelligent minds in simple coats of glossy black feathers, watching, learning, and always remembering. For some species of snakes, the world is perceived in more than one way. Their sight does not end with the visible spectrum of light. They can also see in heat. Pit vipers, like rattlesnakes and copperheads, and also pythons and boas, possess a set of special and highly sensitive organs called pit organs. These are small, deep openings on their faces, located between the eye and the nostril. These pits are lined with a thin membrane that is packed with heat, receptive nerve endings. They can detect, with incredible precision, the faint infrared radiation, the body heat given off by warm, blooded prey. The image that they perceive through these pits is not like our own vision. It is more like a thermal map. A glowing, shimmering silhouette of warm shapes set against a cooler, darker background. This ability gives the snakes a powerful and deadly advantage, especially during nocturnal hunts. They can see a mouse or a rabbit in total, absolute darkness. And this heat vision works in tandem with their normal sight and their sense of smell, giving them a multi-layered and deeply rich perception of the world around them. It allows them to strike with an astonishing and pinpoint accuracy. It is not magic. It is physics, perfectly tuned and integrated into biology. Some scientists have compared it to having a sixth sense. The world seen not through light, but through the gentle, invisible glow of warmth. A quiet reminder that every single species on our planet moves through its own unique version of reality, shaped by the senses and the tools that evolution has given them, and shaped by what they need to do to survive. For most of the long, dark year, the Arctic tundra sleeps. It lies dormant and silent, beneath a thick blanket of ice and snow, scarred by relentless winds. A world of white and grey and profound stillness. But when the brief, bright, and urgent Arctic summer arrives, everything changes. In a matter of just a few days, the frozen soil begins to soften. The snow melts away. The sun, which barely sets, hangs in the sky for nearly 24 hours a day, and the ground erupts. It is not a gradual awakening. It is an explosion of color and scent and life. The entire landscape bursts into a sudden and breathtaking bloom. Fields of tiny, resilient flowers, patches of soft, green mosses, and hardy, low-growing grasses, all at once. It is a world rushing to live. Pollinators, like hardy bumblebees, buzz frantically from flower to flower. Migratory birds that have traveled thousands of miles return to build their nests and raise their young. Mammals, like caribou and Arctic foxes, forage and feast on the sudden abundance. All of it, the entire cycle of life, must happen in an incredibly short window, sometimes just 6 to 8 weeks, before the cold and the darkness return once more. It is a frantic, joyful burst of energy that echoes and ripples across the entire food web. The tundra, though it appears harsh and still and empty for so much of the year, knows how to seize the moment. And in this ancient and powerful rhythm of deep, frozen stillness and sudden, vibrant bloom, life keeps its own perfect time with the turning of the earth and the patient gaze of the sun. We have met the zombie ant fungus before, a chilling example of a parasite that takes control of its host's mind. But the story is even more widespread and more precise than it first appears. The parasitic fungus Ophiocordyceps unilateralis is not a single species. It is a vast and diverse complex of many different species, and each one has evolved to target a single specific species of ant. Once a spore infects an ant, the fungus spreads through its body as a network of fungal cells. For a time, the ant appears to behave normally, but the fungus is communicating. It is growing. It is forming a three-dimensional network that connects the ant's brain to its muscles. And then, at a certain point, the fungus seizes control. The ant, now a helpless puppet, is compelled to leave the safety and social structure of its colony. It marches away, often at a very specific time of day. It climbs a plant stem to a very specific height, usually about 25 centimeters off the ground, where the temperature and humidity are perfect for the fungus to reproduce. It orients itself on the underside of a leaf, often clamping its mandibles onto a specific vein. And there, it dies. The fungus then continues to grow, digesting the ant's internal organs. And finally, a long, thin stalk, the fruiting body, erupts from the back of the ant's head, releasing a shower of new spores down onto the ants of the same species, foraging on the ground below. It is not science fiction. It is not a horror movie. It is a real and highly sophisticated biological strategy, perfected over millions and millions of years of co-evolution. Though it is horrifying to imagine, it is also a striking and powerful example of just how deeply and how precisely evolution can shape and manipulate behavior. The forest holds breathtaking beauty, yes, but it also holds a darker and more chilling kind of elegance. And sometimes the smallest and most unassuming organisms wield the most absolute and terrifying power. At first glance, a sea cucumber might not look like much, just a soft, leathery and sausage-shaped creature lying placidly on the quiet ocean floor. But this humble and slow-moving animal holds a remarkable and almost unbelievable ability. It can at will turn parts of its own body into liquid when it is threatened by a predator or when it needs to navigate into a very tight space, like a crevice in a rock. A sea cucumber can instantly and dramatically alter the stiffness of its own body wall. It does this by controlling the chemical bonds between the collagen fibers in its connective tissue. In a matter of seconds, it can go from being firm and solid to being almost jelly-like and fluid, allowing it to pour itself into tiny cracks and crevices for safety. Then, just as quickly, it can reverse the process, reforming the bonds and becoming solid and firm once more. Some species of sea cucumber have an even more dramatic defense mechanism. When severely threatened, they can violently contract their muscles and expel a large portion of their own internal organs out into the water. These sticky and sometimes toxic guts can entangle or distract a predator, giving the sea cucumber a chance to escape. And then, over the next few weeks, it will simply and quietly regenerate all of its lost organs. It is a survival strategy that is unlike almost any other. Shape shifting without bones, without muscles in the conventional sense, and without any conscious, deliberate effort. Soft, silent, and strangely and wonderfully magical. In the slow and gentle rhythm of the deep sea, the sea cucumber glides, dissolving and reforming, like water given the temporary and beautiful shape of life. In the frigid, crystal, clear waters of the Antarctic Ocean, where the sea is a slurry of ice and temperatures hover just below the freezing point of freshwater, most creatures would freeze solid, their cells ruptured by sharp, expanding ice crystals. But the icefish does not. It drifts slowly and ghost-like through this impossibly cold world. Its secret is a marvel of evolutionary chemistry. It has natural antifreeze circulating in its blood. Icefish have evolved a special set of glycoproteins in their blood plasma. These antifreeze proteins have a unique and remarkable ability. They bind to any tiny ice crystals that begin to form in the fish's body. They surround them and prevent them from growing larger. It is a microscopic, biochemical shield against the relentless and lethal cold. But the strangeness of the icefish does not end there. They have other, equally unusual adaptations for this extreme environment. They have no red blood cells and no hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen and makes blood red. Their blood is a pale, almost completely translucent color. So how do they get oxygen to their tissues? In the incredibly cold Antarctic water, dissolved oxygen levels are very high. The icefish absorbs this oxygen directly from the water through its large gills, and it dissolves directly into its blood plasma, which is then circulated throughout its body by a large and powerful heart. They live their lives in slow motion, moving carefully and deliberately through the frigid, silent waters, conserving every last bit of energy. Their strange and ethereal biology is a living window into how life can adapt and even thrive in the most extreme and forbidding conditions imaginable. In the profound stillness beneath the vast, white plains of Antarctic ice, the icefish drifts, soft-blooded, cold-hearted, and utterly and beautifully unique. And now, with this final, frozen fact softly settled into place, let the world around you grow even more quiet. Tonight, we have wandered through the hidden wonders of our own world. We have drifted through oceans that glow in the dark and listened to the silent, underground conversations of the forest. We have seen the world through the ultraviolet eyes of a bee and felt the Earth's magnetic field through the senses of a migrating bird. We have witnessed creatures that can rewind time and plants that can count. And through all of these quiet journeys, a single, gentle truth echoes beneath the surface. Life is extraordinary, not because it is always strong or perfect or grand, but because it persists, it adapts, it endures, it finds a way, it grows in the deepest darkness and in the brightest light, in the harshest cold and in the most searing heat. Somewhere, right now, a coral reef is waiting for the light of the moon. A tardigrade is sleeping in a speck of dust. A seed that is thousands of years old holds the quiet promise of a future tree. You are a part of this story too. You are not separate from nature. You are made of it. Your bones are forged from the dust of ancient stars. Your body is a walking ecosystem of trillions of microbes. Your mind is powered by tiny, electrical sparks. You are a living, breathing thread in the long and beautiful and ever-unfolding pattern of life on Earth. So wherever you are now, in the quiet of your own space, allow your mind to rest among these wonders. Let your breath slow to its own, natural rhythm. Let your thoughts grow soft and gentle at the edges. The journey of discovery does not end here. It simply pauses, waiting until curiosity calls again. Sleep well, and thank you for dreaming with us.